picture this, right? The year is 410 AD, and the unthinkable has just happened.
The absolute unthinkable.
Yeah, Rome, I mean, the eternal city, the unconquered mistress of the world for over 1,000 years, has just been sacked by the Goths.
Yeah.
Smoke is rising over the Seven Hills. Refugees are fleeing into the countryside. And this massive shockwave is just reverberating across the entire known world.
It is really hard to overstate the psychological devastation of that specific moment. Like, for the people actually living through it, the fall of Rome wasn't just, a political crisis.
Right, or just a bad military defeat.
Exactly. It felt like the end of reality itself. People genuinely believed that because Rome was falling, the world was literally ending. The entire framework of human civilization just seemed to be collapsing overnight.
And out of the smoking ruins of that literal and, I guess, psychological collapse, we get one of the most monumental works of human thought.
We really do.
So, our mission for this deep dive today is to take St. Augustine's foundational text, the City of God, and kind of extract his groundbreaking framework for how the world actually works. We're going to explore his concept of the earthly city versus the city of God.
Which is just a fascinating split.
It really is. We want to analyze how humanity organizes itself around two entirely different systems of, well, meaning, power, identity, and desire. Temporary earthly values versus eternal ones. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, so to even begin to understand the ideas, you have to understand the immediate crisis that triggered them. Because in the aftermath of 410 AD, the surviving pagans in the Roman Empire were desperately looking for a scapegoat.
Right, someone to blame for the fire.
Exactly. And they pointed their fingers squarely at the Christians. I mean, their argument was that abandoning the old Roman gods for Christianity was the direct, literal cause of the disaster.
Because they weren't sacrificing anymore.
Right. They believed that because they stopped sacrificing to Jupiter and Mars and all the rest, the gods had just abandoned Rome to the barbarians.
Which, I mean, sounds like a pretty standard historical scapegoat situation, right? But reading through the sources, Augustine doesn't just play defense here. He turns the pagan argument completely upside down.
Oh, he completely wrecks it.
Yeah, he uses their own mythology against them.
He does. He specifically brings up Virgil's Aeneid, which was, essentially the sacred text of Roman identity. It was their founding myth.
Right.
And he reminds the pagans of the story of Aeneas fleeing the burning city of Troy, because in that story, Aeneas is depicted carrying his household gods away from the flames to safety.
Which is just, it's so ironic.
It is. Augustine points out the glaring flaw in their logic. He's like, look, the gods didn't protect the people of Troy. The people had to protect the statues of the gods.
Wait, so they were trusting gods that essentially needed human bodyguards?
Yes, exactly. So Augustine just asks them, how could you ever trust the defense of Rome to conquered gods who couldn't even save themselves from a house fire?
That completely dismantles the whole idea of divine Roman protection. I mean, it's just a devastating logical takedown.
It really is. But then he pushes even further by highlighting this crazy historical anomaly that happened during the actual sack of Rome.
Oh, right, with the sanctuaries.
Yeah. When the Gothic barbarians breached the city, they completely broke the usual merciless rules of ancient warfare. They actually spared anyone who fled into the Christian churches.
Wow.
Yeah, the basilicas of the apostles became these massive, untouchable sanctuaries.
Which is a huge departure from how ancient warfare normally operated.
Right.
I mean, usually if a city's walls fell, nowhere was safe.
Nowhere. I mean, in traditional warfare, temples were not safe havens. They were prime targets for looting because that's where the gold was.
Right, right.
Augustine actually contrasts the sack of Rome with the Greeks sacking Troy. In Troy, the Greeks slaughtered people right at the altar of Juno's temple.
Jeez.
So the fact that these bloodthirsty barbarians suddenly showed mercy and specifically respected the name of Christ was something the pagans were just conveniently ignoring while they complained about being abandoned by Jupiter.
Yeah, that makes sense. But look, let me play devil's advocate here. If you're a person sitting in the rubble of 410 AD, you have to be asking a really difficult question.
Of course.
If the Christian God is so powerful and the churches are these great sanctuaries, why did good, pious Christians still suffer? Like, why did they lose their homes, their wealth, and in some cases, their lives?
It's the classic problem of pain.
Yeah. Why didn't this all-powerful God just put a protective force field around the good people?
Well, Augustine provides a really fascinating, kind of counterintuitive mechanism for how we should view earthly fortunes. He basically explains that God intentionally gives both good and bad earthly fortunes to both good and bad people
Okay, but why?
to test them, to reveal their true underlying character.
The text uses some incredibly vivid analogies for this. There's one about a flail, like the farming tool used to beat harvested grain.
Yes, that's a great one. Augustine writes, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here. He says, under the same flail, the straw is beaten small, while the grain is cleansed.
So the violence is the same.
The violent action of the flail is identical, but the result depends entirely on what is being struck. The straw gets crushed and destroyed, but the grain is purified and separated.
Oh, I see.
He also uses the analogy of stirring. If you stir up a pool of mud, it exhales a horrible stench. But if you stir up a sweet ointment, it emits this beautiful fragrance.
Let me push back on this, though. Because if someone literally loses their entire livelihood in a barbarian raid, isn't telling them, hey, you're just being stirred like ointment, isn't that a bit of a hollow coping mechanism?
I mean, it sounds like one at first.
Right. How does that actually help them?
Well, it sounds like a coping mechanism until you understand the mechanics of identity that Augustine is getting at. See, the affliction is the exact same for everyone. A house burns down, wealth is stolen.
Right.
But for a person who has anchored their entire identity to that material wealth, losing it actually destroys them. Their whole foundation is gone.
They're the straw being crushed.
Exactly. But for the person whose identity is anchored in an eternal reality, temporal loss doesn't destroy them because their true treasure wasn't in that house to begin with.
Wow.
What's fascinating here is that the suffering merely reveals where you have placed your ultimate value.
So if earthly security is really that fragile, what happens to an entire society that just decides, hey, physical stuff and human glory are the only things that matter?
That is exactly what Augustine calls the earthly city.
Okay, here we go.
It is a society fundamentally driven by what he terms the lust of rule, like this insatiable desire for domination. It's an entire system organized around human glory, earthly peace, and material prosperity as the highest possible goods.
And reading how the Romans operated, they built their entire civilization on the currency of human praise. I mean, they were just obsessed with it.
They took it to chilling extremes. Augustine points to figures like Brutus, one of the famous founders of the Roman Republic.
Right.
Brutus discovered that his own sons were conspiring against the state, and he personally ordered their execution.
That is just horrifying. He literally sacrificed his own children.
He did it for the glory of Rome, for human praise, and to cement his political legacy.
Wow.
Augustine uses this to show what happens when your highest value is a temporary earthly institution. You will sacrifice anything, even the most permanent, fundamental human bonds, for a hollow title that history is eventually going to forget anyway.
So if your only goal is domination and glory, how is a society like that any different from, like, an organized crime syndicate?
That is precisely the question Augustine asks.
Seriously.
Yeah. He argues that without true justice, kingdoms are literally just great robberies. And he includes this brilliant historical anecdote about Alexander the Great to illustrate it.
Oh, the pirate story.
Yes. So a captured pirate is brought before Alexander, and the emperor demands to know what the pirate means by keeping hostile possession of the sea. Like, how dare you terrorize my waters?
And the pirate's response is incredibly bold.
It's amazing. The pirate looks at the most powerful man in the world and basically says, because I do it with a petty ship, I am called a robber, whilst thou who dost it with a great fleet art styled emperor.
Man, that is so good. So what does this all mean for the earthly city? Basically, you strip away the togas, the marble columns, and the fancy military parades, and you're just left with a society building a multi-million-dollar mansion on a known sinkhole.
Yes, a sinkhole.
Everyone inside is fighting for the master bedroom, stepping on each other's necks for a better view, completely ignoring the fact that the ground underneath them is mathematically guaranteed to collapse. It's an organizational structure built entirely on temporary vanity.
And the Roman gods were the ultimate enablers of this sinkhole society.
How so?
Well, they offered no moral guidance whatsoever. They patronized theatrical, immoral plays. They only promised temporary victories and earthly prosperity. They were perfectly designed to feed the earthly city's absolute worst impulses.
Okay, so if the earthly city is this hollow robbery doomed to collapse, how is a person supposed to live? What is the alternative to the sinkhole?
This brings us to Augustine's core concept of the city of God. The citizens of this city are fundamentally described as pilgrims on earth.
Like travelers.
Exactly. A pilgrim is someone who is just passing through. They live in the world, they interact with the physical environment, but they do not anchor their identity to it. Their ultimate value, like their highest good, is eternal life and true justice, which is found only in the worship of God.
Reading the sources, they outline this really specific psychological distinction about how these pilgrims interact with material things. It comes down to the difference between using something and enjoying something.
Yeah, this is one of Augustine's sharpest insights, I think. When he says enjoy, he means loving something for its own sake, treating it as your ultimate goal or destination.
Okay.
Citizens of the earthly city want to enjoy money, status, and material things. And because they want to enjoy those things, they try to use God to get them.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they pray solely for wealth. They offer sacrifices solely for a military victory. They essentially treat the divine as a vending machine to dispense earthly goods.
But the citizens of the heavenly city reverse that entirely.
Right. They use the things of this world to sustain themselves on their journey, but they only truly enjoy God. God is the end goal, not the means to an end.
Okay, let me give a modern example to see if I have the mechanics of this right.
Sure, go for it.
It's kind of like the difference between using a car to get to a beautiful destination versus sitting in your driveway worshiping the car itself and never actually going anywhere. The car is really useful, but it's a terrible ultimate destination.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. The earthly city worships the vehicle. The city of God uses the vehicle to travel home.
But wait, if the earthly city is this corrupt, doomed structure, why don't the citizens of the city of God just leave?
What do you mean?
Like, why not move to a commune, stop paying taxes, and completely check out of society? Just let the sinkhole collapse on its own.
It's a logical question, especially in 410 AD when society was literally burning down around them. But Augustine strongly argues against isolation.
Really?
Yeah. He explains that the two cities are inextricably commingled and entangled in this world. They are woven together until the end of human history. The citizens of the city of God don't physically leave. They still participate in society.
So they still go to work?
They hold jobs, they raise families, they endure the flaws of the earthly city right alongside everyone else.
So they can even hold political office, like they can be mayors or governors?
Absolutely. Augustine points out that if they are given political power, they use it, but they use it differently.
Oh, so?
Well, he cites Christian emperors who use their authority not to aggrandize their own glory, but to maintain peace and execute true justice. The crucial difference isn't in where they live or what jobs they hold, it's in where their hearts are tied.
Oh.
Their ultimate loyalties are anchored to an eternal reality, so they aren't corrupted by the temporary power they wield.
So where does this profound split even come from? Are human beings just randomly born into one of two camps? Because we have to look at the absolute origin of these two cities, and the sources trace this cosmic divide back to an environment before human history even began.
It goes way back.
Yeah, it actually started with the angels.
It did. The blueprint for these two cities was drawn in the angelic realm. And to understand how it happened, we have to look at the mechanics of the will.
Okay.
Augustine introduces a philosophical concept here that completely shifted how people thought about good and bad. He argued that evil is not a physical substance. It is not a thing you can hold in your hand.
Wait, if evil isn't a physical thing, what is it? Just an absence?
He describes it as a defection of the will.
A defection.
Yeah, a corruption of something that was originally good. A turning away from the highest good toward a lesser good.
The text calls it misdirected love, which I find fascinating.
Aha.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about greed, right? Avarice isn't the fault of the gold.
No, not at all.
The gold is just a metal. It's completely neutral. The evil is the fault of the human being who chooses to love the gold more than they love justice or other people.
Exactly. The object isn't the problem. The priority is the problem. And this is the exact mechanism that split the angelic realm.
Really?
Yeah. All the angels were created good, but the bad angels fell because they suffered this defection of the will. They became enamored with their own power and beauty. They looked inward at themselves instead of outward at God.
Oh, wow.
That pride, that misdirected love of self, became the foundational sin of the earthly city.
While the good angels did the opposite.
Yes, the good angels cleaved to God in humility. They recognized that their light and power came from an eternal source outside themselves. That humility formed the absolute foundation of the city of God.
To really grasp the environment where all of this plays out, we have to look at how Augustine tackles the concept of time itself. because he doesn't just treat time as a clock ticking in the background.
Oh, his concept of time is mind-bending.
He argues a massive cosmological point. God didn't create the universe in time. He created time along with the universe.
Which is a staggering intellectual leap for the 5th century. I mean, Augustine realized that time requires motion. It requires change, passing from the future to the present to the past.
Right.
Because God is completely unchangeable, God exists outside of time entirely in what Augustine calls unchangeable eternity.
So there was no before creation.
Yeah.
There wasn't some endless waiting period where God was just idle looking at his watch until he decided to make the universe.
Precisely, because time itself is a property of the physical universe. Asking what God was doing before creation is a nonsensical question. There was no then when there was no time. God encompasses all of time simultaneously.
Okay, so if we connect this to the bigger picture, how does that physics concept actually impact the people living in these two cities?
It completely dictates their relationship to existence itself. Because the city of God is anchored in an eternal God, it operates on an eternal timeline. Its citizens are resting in a reality that doesn't decay. But the earthly city is entirely trapped within the physical universe, which means it is trapped by passing time.
So if your entire identity is built on things that time destroys, your wealth, your youth, your political status, then time is your ultimate enemy.
It is a terrifying countdown. Augustine bluntly observes that from the very moment we are born, we begin to die. Every single day we live is a day deducted from our total.
That's grim, but true.
For the earthly city, the passage of time is a relentless march toward the loss of absolutely everything they love.
Because when time runs out, the mansion on the sinkhole finally collapses.
Yeah.
But for the city of God, time running out just means the pilgrimage is over. It means finally arriving home.
Exactly. It forces a total reevaluation of what we consider as a success or a disaster. When you view human behavior through this lens, the frantic climbing, the anxiety, the desperate need for control, it all makes perfect sense. It's the natural behavior of someone who knows they are running out of time.
Think about your own life for a second. Whether you're navigating a high-stakes boardroom, scrolling through a chaotic news cycle, or just trying to figure out what matters in your day-to-day routine, this framework from 1600 years ago is just incredibly relevant today.
It really is.
We are all choosing every single day which city we belong to, and we choose it by what we love. Are we organizing our lives around human glory, temporary control, and the exhausting, anxiety-inducing climb for status? Or are we organizing our lives around eternal truth, humility, and a justice that outlasts empires?
The profound takeaway here is that you aren't just swept along by the tides of history. What you prioritize fundamentally shapes the reality you inhabit.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Before Augustine wrote this text, the ancient world largely viewed history as a cycle. They thought existence was just an endless, repetitive loop of rising and falling empires where nothing truly new ever happens.
Just a treadmill.
Right, but by proving that time itself was a created thing with a definitive beginning, Augustine shattered that cyclical view. He proved that history is a straight line moving toward a specific destination. New things can happen. Your choices actually matter in the grand scope of eternity. So, if the earthly city is defined by the absolute terror of running out of time, and the city of God was defined by resting securely in eternity, ask yourself the next time you frantically check your watch or obsess over your professional legacy, which city's passport are you currently carrying?